All right, let's dive into a really dramatic story from an ancient text. It's got everything: a huge celebration, a sudden tragedy, and a king's super public, super controversial dance. This is one of those moments that really defines a ruler, and believe it or not, it brings up questions about dignity and worship that we still wrestle with today.
I mean, seriously, what would it take? Picture that. A powerful king, a monarch, just tossing aside all his royal dignity in front of literally everyone. This is so much more than just some weird historical footnote, you know? There's a really powerful story behind this, and it all starts with a plan that goes horribly, horribly wrong.
So our story kicks off with King David. He's pretty new to the throne, and he's trying to pull a fractured nation together. And he gets this big idea, one he thinks is brilliant. Let's bring the most sacred object in the entire land, the Ark of God, to my new capital, Jerusalem.
Now, this was way more than just moving a fancy box. The Ark was seen as the symbol of God's actual presence, like his throne on earth. So by bringing it to Jerusalem, David was making this huge statement. He was saying, this city, right here, is now the political and the spiritual center of the kingdom. It was a total power move, yeah, but also a move meant to bring everyone together under one banner.
And David does not do this quietly. He gathers 30,000 men. Think about that number. It's an enormous procession. They put the ark on a brand new cart, which seems like a good idea, and they kick off what has to be the biggest national party in their history. On the surface, everything looks like it's going perfectly.
And can you just imagine the sound? I mean, the text says they were celebrating with all their might. We're talking a full orchestra of ancient instruments, harps, lyres, cymbals, the whole shebang. The energy must have been absolutely electric. This is a moment of just pure, unfiltered national joy. And then, just like that, in a single moment, everything changes. The cart carrying the ark, it's being pulled by oxen, and they trip, they stumble. The whole procession lurches, and the sacred ark starts to tip over.
So one of the guys guiding the cart, a man named Uzzah, he does what any of us would probably do. It's pure instinct. He sees the ark about to fall, and he just reaches out his hand to steady it. Just a simple reflex, right? He's trying to protect this sacred thing.
And the result is just shocking and brutal. For what the text calls an irreverent act, Uzzah is struck dead right there on the spot. The music stops, the celebration grinds to a halt. In an instant, all that joy turns to horror and confusion. The whole project is a complete and catastrophic failure.
So yeah, the party is definitely over. David is now staring at this terrifying new reality. He has to hit pause, rethink absolutely everything, and face his own fear of this immense power he's just witnessed.
You know, David's reaction is really fascinating here. He's not just scared, the text says he was also angry. Angry at what just happened, confused, and probably feeling completely unworthy. He calls the whole thing off. He just leaves the ark at the house of some local guy named Obed-Edom because frankly he has no idea what else to do.
And this is where you can really see the turning point in David's mind. The ark, this object that brought death and fear, is now just sitting in some guy's house. And then for months, David starts hearing reports that Obed-Edom and his entire family are being incredibly blessed. The very source of his fear is now a source of blessing for someone else.
And this wasn't a quick fix. We're talking 3 months. For 3 whole months, David has to stew in his failure and his fear, all while hearing news that the thing he's terrified of is blessing this other family. It gives him time to think, to really reflect, and he starts to realize maybe the ark itself wasn't the problem. Maybe his approach was.
So, armed with this new understanding, David decides to try again. But this time, he's going to do it right. This second attempt won't just be about a big party. It's going to be defined by deep reverence and respect.
And right here, you can see the difference, plain as day. The first time, they used a new cart, a method for moving common things. The second time, no. It's carried properly by men on their shoulders, the way it was supposed to be done. No shortcuts. And look at the sacrifices. Every few steps, they stop to make offerings. The entire attitude has shifted from a parade to a truly sacred pilgrimage. And this is the moment. As the ark finally makes its way into Jerusalem, David is just overcome. He takes off his royal robes and puts on a simple linen ephod, basically the humble clothes of a priest. He's setting aside his status as king,
and he dances, leaping and celebrating with every ounce of energy he has. This isn't a performance for the crowd. It's a raw, unfiltered explosion of joy and worship.
But not everyone is feeling the joy. High up in a palace window, his wife, Michal, is watching this whole scene unfold. And as she sees her husband, the king, dancing like a commoner, she's not filled with pride or joy. She is filled with pure contempt. She despises him for it.
So the citywide party eventually winds down. David comes home ready to bless his own family, but he's not met with congratulations. He's met with a cold, sharp-tongued rebuke. The public spectacle is about to become a very private argument.
Oof. You can just hear the sarcasm dripping from her words. To her, this wasn't worship. This was a king humiliating himself, losing all his dignity. She saw him making a fool of himself, lowering his status in front of the lowest people in society. For her, it's all about reputation and what a king is supposed to look like.
But David's response is so powerful. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't back down for a second. In fact, he doubles down. He basically says, that dance wasn't for you, it wasn't for the people, it was for God. And this is the key. He says he's willing to be seen as even more undignified, more humiliated if that's what it takes. He's chosen his audience, and it's an audience of one.
And the story ends on this really stark, almost somber note. The source text just states this as the final outcome. It seems her contempt for David's worship closed a door on her own future, a final, quiet consequence in a story that was anything but.
Which leaves us with this big question, doesn't it? David chose his reverence for God over his royal reputation. Michal chose the opposite. And this ancient story kind of forces us to look at our own lives and ask, when our deepest beliefs are put on public display, where do we draw that line? What ends up being more important? How we look to other people or the authenticity of what we feel inside?